I was like 12 years old. I was always having a job. And so for me, when it came to work and going to college, I was like, if I'm going to work, I want it to be something where I wake up in the morning and I have fun every single day. I don't want my job to feel like work. I want it to feel like play.
Welcome to Black Businesses Matter, a podcast about why Black businesses matter and the benefits of collaborating and advocating for Black businesses to drive impact. Each episode, we will cover legacy, hope, Black joy, funding sources, cultural shifts, equity, and so much more. We will provide inspiration and action while spreading some joy to a thriving community of Black business owners and leading thought leaders. Black Business Matters podcast is produced by the L3 Agency, a culturally sensitive influencer marketing and communications firm in Chicago, where relationships are our currency, passion is our profit maker, and people are our bottom line. I'm Larvetta Lofton, your host and founder of the L3 Agency. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Black Businesses Matter. You know, we're just having so much fun with our guests. And I have to say that I certainly am inspired with every guest that we have. And it really just helps us to make sure that we are sharing stories of resilience. Just recently, I got an email from someone who is a podcast listener. She quoted one of our guests and what they had said. And so I just want to say I appreciate these little notes that people share and how they're inspired with the podcast every week and the things that are shared and the guests and what they share. So I just want to thank you all for listening to Black Businesses Matter and just riding with us on this journey, because we're reaching about a year. So by the time we drop this episode, we will be at a year of producing really awesome content, which I'm excited about who we have up next today, and producing great content and highlighting incredible thought leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and somewhere in between, we've had faith leaders. We've had so much. And so it truly has been my joy to be able to sit in this seat and to really sit down and interview these incredible individuals, game changers, history makers, you name it. And so you all know I run a marketing and communications firm in Chicago, and we definitely love to develop authentic content. That is what we love to do. And so our next guest, you guys are in for a treat, because one thing's for sure is I learned something about it I didn't know, but you all know how much I love HBCU love. And so we have Jevonne Bowman, who is the CEO of JAB New York. And she is also the creator of a Content Queen Academy. And she's a graduate of Howard University. So we will definitely shout her out in the HBCU love. She participated in the Made in New York PA training program. PA stands for Production Assistant. This awesome, dope sister has over 15 years of experience in TV. Her credits include Quantico. I do like that show. Connected, Storm Chasers, 4 Weddings, Doomsday Preppers, and All on the Line with Joe and Z. So she knows what it takes to make it in this business, and she is helping others to do the same. I am excited to have her to really share her journey, because what you all find out is that she graduated from Howard and then how she got into this incredible program that I knew nothing about. So hello, welcome Jevonne to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And congratulations on 1 year of podcasting, because I know it's a lot of work and it takes consistency. So I definitely give my props to you.
Thank you so much, Jevonne, because I promise you, I did this and I said, oh, we're just going to see where it goes. And Lord knows, a year comes by. You know how it goes. And you have babies, you're like, oh my gosh, it's been a year. So this is my baby. And the baby is now a year. So thank you so much for that. So tell me about this journey from Howard University, graduating there. And where did you graduate at Howard? And where did you graduate at Howard?
So I studied TV and film at Howard. So my major was in communication. I had a minor in philosophy, and I knew from like day one, I wanted to work in the industry. I wanted to work behind the scenes. I wanted to produce. I wanted to be creative. I actually started at a different school. I started freshman year at Hofstra University. And where I grew up in upstate New York, a lot of us, we never heard of HBCUs. Like we just were not, they were not promoted to us. And so it wasn't until I started to meet people who were born and raised in the South that I learned about Howard University. And as soon as I found out, I had to apply. And I was there the next year. And so my journey at Howard, it was incredible because it was just an immersion in Black culture and in Black media in particular. So it was such a breath of fresh air to be able to learn in an environment that was so supportive.
That's awesome. I love when we get to talk about HBCU culture and the impact that it has on us as individuals. And then, of course, as contributors to the world. Leaving Howard, Jevonne, tell me this journey, like graduating and kind of how did you land today in what you do with your company? And then some of the things that you did along the way.
Well, I was always working. That's something about me is I've been working since I was like 12 years old. I was always having a job. And so for me, when it came to work and going to college, I was like, if I'm going to work, I want it to be something where I wake up in the morning and I have fun every single day. I don't want my job to feel like work. I want it to feel like play. And so when I was 14 years old, I actually had the experience of being on the Today Show for a segment on body image and how the media affects body image. And that was my first time being on a professional set and seeing like all of the jobs that were available. And so that was like what put the seed in my mind, what planted the seed to actually think that this could be a career for me. A lot of people, in my family, they had jobs as like nurses and working for the state. My dad is blue collar. He was a welder. So I felt like my family, they weren't initially as supportive of like my career just because they didn't understand it. So I had, like a pressure of there is no plan B. There's only plan A. I'm going to work in this business. So even when I was in college, I was getting internships. So I interned on a TV show called To the Contrary, which aired on PBS. It was a weekly news discussion show featuring women and like panelists and things. I got experience producing TV that way. And then I also worked in the ad space, like political ad space in DC. So I got an internship at GMMB the year that Barack Obama was running for president, and they had him as a client. My internship, I learned how to use Avid, which is an editing program, and got to see what it took to actually like create campaigns and do ads and work in a fast-paced environment. So that really prepared me emotionally, but also professionally to take this to that level of like, this is a job, it's a commitment. I always knew I wanted to move back to New York City just because I felt like the job market in DC, it just wasn't giving like what I wanted to be doing. So I was working on a graduate thesis film. I was just part of the crew, and some people on the crew had come back from New York. They'd already graduated and they were working in the business. Through developing a relationship with them, they put me on to the Made in New York PA training program, where it's for New Yorkers, where they help you learn how to become a production assistant, which is the entry level job in the industry. So unless you know somebody who's in the business already and can pull you in, or like, yeah, it's all about your network in this industry. So for me, that is exactly what I needed to get my foot in the door, is to develop those skills to succeed, but also the relationships to actually get hired. I did the Made in New York PA training program. I was cycle 17, so I'm an OG. That was in 2010. And I immediately, started to work. And because I was such a good worker and I was really smart, people, noticed me. I met my first mentor that spring, and we worked together for several years, and she helped me gain the skills I needed to become a producer. So that's how I got started.
Wow. And so, the reason why I'm intrigued because I don't believe that people understand, and you tell me if this is how you feel too. I too was a mass comm major, and I felt like people knew like the news. And at one point I wanted to be a newscaster, but people didn't know the production team. They just knew, oh, yeah, they deliver the news, but they didn't know all of the people that produce the show, that do the research. I mean, it was just all of it. And now that we're in a space where somewhat it's being exposed, do you find that increasingly more and more women? Because when I remember, like, sadly enough, there weren't a lot of women. And so I'm wondering now in this place of production, are we seeing more and more women because they're producing their own content, or they're going to you and you are helping them to build their content?
I think there's levels to making content. So I'm going to address the professional, like TV and film content first, because that's really where I feel like there's a lot of gender bias. So I feel like for me, initially, when I graduated from the PA training program, it was hard for me to get like my first job, especially being a woman, because it seemed like the boys, the men, were getting hired first because as a PA, you're expected to do the grunt work. So carrying things, heavy lifting, driving trucks. And so I felt like for me, I really had to tap into my masculine energy in order to prove myself that I could be just as valuable as a man when I was on set. However, once you're on set, especially with the larger productions, you'll notice the backbone of productions, in particular, the producers, the production coordinators, the production managers, the people in the office, accounting, those jobs are usually occupied by women. So the question becomes, how do I enter into those positions if I can't even get in at the ground level as a PA? So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done on the mainstream industry side to keep those positions available and fair and accessible to women. I did work on some other professional sets where they were unionized. So those jobs where they're harder to come by because you have to know somebody to really get into that kind of world. Things are a little bit easier because you're not allowed to touch the heavy equipment. So you don't have to worry about lifting. So you might have a paperwork PA or a background PA or a first team PA. They might want to put a woman there because of how we communicate and our styles and our feminine energy, being more appreciated. But I definitely do see a bias in the mainstream industry. And then as far as like content creation is concerned, I think a lot of women who are not intimidated by equipment and are willing to do the research, they're going to be the ones to create content and figure it out. However, creating content is intimidating, especially if you don't know all of the roles in a professional production, because you expect it to just be like, I pick up my camera, I shoot it, I press record, and now I have content. And we all know there's so much more that goes into creating content than just pressing record or having a good camera. So when I decided to create Content Queen Academy, my main goal was to demystify the content creation process and specifically focusing on female entrepreneurs, because with video, we can now market our businesses in a very powerful way. However, a lot of women, they're not feeling confident on camera. They're not feeling confident with technology, and they need someone to hold their hands and walk them through it and teach them how in a space that's safe for them. So that's exactly what I wanted to do with Content Queen Academy, because I felt like a lot of spaces online for women to learn how to create content, they feel very bro. My thing is, we create content like queens. It doesn't have to be difficult. It could be very simple, and I like to simplify the process.
I'm so grateful that you are talking about it to simplify it, because on one side of the business, because we run a marketing communications firm, I don't think that we're valued for developing this rich content. And so it's kind of like, oh, yeah, no. And it's like, no, yeah. I mean, it's a process. And so the idea of content creates, what do you want people to think of you? And so I do think, before I say content is now a term within our marketing space, everything was social, 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 right? But I do want to talk to you about how to protect your content. And ensuring that your content is yours. Oftentimes, right, we're on social media, and I know you've seen it. I mean, now they're talking about there at some point we're going to be paying, you're going to pay to get somebody's content. So, love to get your thoughts on that. Do you see that to be very valuable, given that sometimes it is a lot of time to develop that content?
I think it does take a lot of time to develop content and it's a big investment. And it's only natural to want to protect your investment. And coming from the traditional TV and film industry, I think social was really looked down upon because it was seen as cheap to produce and not quite as valuable and not necessarily as easy to protect. So I think a lot of people who are coming from the traditional media, they might hesitate to enter the digital space. I know I did, specifically for those types of reasons. Is like, I didn't want to post my films online because I felt like they would be stolen. You feel like your content is going to be misappropriated and things of that nature. So I definitely understand that fear. However, from a producer's perspective, you have to protect your content by actually creating something that you can protect. So you should be having things that are scripts and getting them copyrighted, creating businesses for your content, getting trademarks for your content, your words that you use. And these are ways that you can actually protect your content and protect your intellectual property so that you can actually build a case once you start monetizing it. So I definitely believe that with social media, you have to be careful because it's a free for all in some respects. Until recently, even getting music to use for your videos, that could be seen as something where it could be a conflict of interest, where the musical artists feel like they're not being protected because anyone can just use their music without licensing it. So you have that copyright infringement issue. But now, for example, with reels and things going viral in that nature, we are able to use these types of songs and things without having to go through the traditional licensing process. I think you have to understand the platform that you're on and behave appropriately. If you don't want to post something on a platform where you might lose control of it, maybe you just post a snippet or a teaser and a trailer, and then you have the full length content on a platform that you feel is more secure, maybe behind a paywall. Those are the things that I think of when it comes to protecting your content. But when you're just getting started, I guess getting lots of exposure is important, but that's something where you just have to know, like when you put something out in the world, you do lose a little bit of control over it. So you have to be ready to let go. And I still have projects in my content bank where I'm just like, I'm not really ready to let go of this yet. So I'm not going to put it out. But I think you have to know what you're comfortable with and operate accordingly.
And I think it is. You have to, you being the person who is the visionary behind your content. And I think it's helpful. It's good when the expert tells you, hey, I'm uncomfortable about some of my stuff. I think it's always good when the person that's the leader can feel like, I'm not comfortable sharing this yet. And I think it's so important as we talk to our listeners and we understand content for you in the film and TV and working on productions and so many people, sometimes we feel like this, and I'm just going to say this. Well, there's just so much. When is my content even going to make it? So I just think about people that feel like that. Like there's so much out here, are people really going to pay attention to my content? Entrepreneurs may feel like that. Solopreneurs may feel like that. CEOs may feel like that. Like, how do you address that?
I think that mindset is a way of procrastinating and pulling yourself out the game before you even started. So it really doesn't matter if other people are making content similar to the content that you want to make because you are you and you're going to have your own style and it's going to be unique because it's coming from you. So I would never hesitate to make content just because I feel like the market is oversaturated. I think if you have a unique point of view, you should definitely go for it. Another thing I think is key is having the proper messaging and understanding your audience. So as an entrepreneur, I already kind of have an idea of the audience that I want to target, my ideal client, what my avatar is, and I really hone in on what their problems are and what my solution is for their problems. And all the content that I create, I want it to be something that is going to provide value for them. And so I think if you are really not going into it thinking about yourself and thinking about what if no one pays attention to me, but instead change your mindset into how can I serve people, you're going to get a lot further creating content.
Listening to you, Jevonne, I think it's just, I mean, I think it's helpful for people because one, you have such a warm spirit. Just, I can feel the spirit through audio. And I know for most of our listeners, you're listening. And I just want you all to know, Jevonne just told me she has two toddlers running around in her house. So the fact that she is able to maintain this interview with two toddlers, she's got some major, major superpowers over there to be able to do that. I do want to ask you this. I just want to say this to our listeners. If you're just jumping in, I just want you all to know that we are hearing from Jevonne Bowman, who is the CEO of Jab New York and also the creator of Content Queen Academy. And so she is just giving us information on developing content, as many of us that are CEOs or thought leaders are building out content and just giving us information around that. So one of the things that I would love if you could share is like your favorite tips that you can provide for people as they build content, especially people that ultimately are afraid to post on social media. I'm just afraid. I'm just afraid. So what kind of tips would you provide for them?
Well, first of all, if your goals and your dreams scare you, you're headed in the right direction. I think there's so many of us that really don't dream big enough. We're thinking small. And so we really need to really take a step back and think about what do we really want and get into a space where we can actually feel comfortable owning that, owning our voices, and actually saying, I want to create a six-figure income making content. Really own that, go into it with a plan. So for me as a producer, someone with a production background, I think about things, how can I make it more efficient? My main tip is to start with the right message. Create your message, create a script or an outline before you get into production, because it doesn't matter how beautiful your photography is. It doesn't matter if your message isn't hitting. So I think one of the things I love about social media is seeing content that goes viral that has like really crappy production value. Like it's kind of dark, it's a little blurry, but we all love it and we share it because there's something that really speaks to us. It speaks to the human condition. Maybe it makes us laugh or it's heartwarming. I would say start with your message. Once you have that figured out of what you want to communicate, what you want to say, what you want your outcome to be, then, when you approach production, work with the resources that you have. Be resourceful. You don't have to go out and wait until you buy the perfect camera and the perfect lens. You can start with what you have, even if it's your iPhone. And so being resourceful, I think that's super important. Another thing that I think is important is being consistent. So being consistent in your messaging, being consistent in your aesthetic, being consistent in the frequency in which you're going to post, because you kind of dictate what people expect from you by what you're giving them. For example, I try to go live every Tuesday on Instagram at Six Figure Content Queen at 10 p.m. And so I'm starting to develop an audience that knows to expect it. I also post the replays, immediately. So if you miss it, you can rewatch it. But I have a consistency about that. And then last but not least, I would say confidence. Develop your confidence, whether that's using the tools and the technology, or if it's going to be you appearing on camera, your public speaking. Start to work on your self-esteem, because this is something that's really going to pay off in the long run. The more experience that you get with the tools and the technology and being on camera, the better you're going to perform and you're going to get more comfortable with it. It's going to become like a routine. And not everything that you put out there as far as content is concerned is going to perform the way you want it to. Had like 10,000 views or 10,000 plays, and I just didn't expect it. I'm coming from behind the scenes where, I'm like, I don't want to be in front of the camera. And so when I got 10,000 views, I only have 200 followers. I just kind of like froze. I was like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. But not everything that you post is going to do that. Try to identify what you're doing so that when you do have something that goes viral, you can identify like, what did you do that made that happen? If you're all over the place with your content, you'll never know how to replicate it. So if you develop a system and you repeat the process, it'll be easier for you to replicate it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I'm just so glad that you're on because someone's a marketer and really helping, our clients and brands understand that process. Sometimes they just don't get it and see the value behind it, but just you breaking it down into these, I think, smart micro steps that really helps to understand because they'll, even brands, they'll be like, oh, but this one we got 8,000 plays, and then this one we only got 1,000, right? And so realizing that all content too isn't always created equal because sometimes it's about timing. It's the timing that it's loaded. I do believe it's environment, what's going on in it currently in America and things that are going on that makes it also culturally relevant. I just appreciate you walking us through. And I just want to congratulate you for one is developing from a PA to really creating this content in the film industry, but then helping entrepreneurs in this space, because I do think that film and TV kind of used to be in this place where it was just like separate. And so this idea of like film and TV professionals, production folks are helping everyday people with their content. And that's what you're doing. And I love that. So I love it because I recall it was just like, oh no, I just do music videos and they just kind of stay in that and don't expand beyond that kind of community. I love that there's, multiple communities that are being developed in this space and it makes it achievable on that end. So I just want to commend you on that. So, Jevonne, one of the things that we ask all of our guests, because we believe it is important for the world to understand, given everything that we've had to endure during the pandemic, during George Floyd, injustice, and just everything around that, why do Black businesses matter?
Wow, this is such an important question. Personally, I am one of the only entrepreneurs in my entire family. Everyone has worked a corporate job or worked for the state or a nurse or something like that. Where I'm from in upstate New York, it's very difficult to climb the corporate ladder as a Black person, as an African American. And it starts in school and education. It starts with schools that are underfunded, kids that are at lower reading levels, lower test scores, lower graduation, and it just trickles down. We're dealing with the school to prison pipeline, first of all. And then when it comes to finding work that's actually going to be able to support you and support your family, it's very difficult. So to me, Black businesses matter because we have got to take our economic power and channel it into our own communities and take our power into our own hands. And it's been very difficult to have working capital and to actually build a business. But what I find is that when you do have something, people want to support it. People want to support the community, whether you're selling clothes or whether you're selling plates. People are going to support you. So for me, when I created my business, Content Queen Academy, I wanted to be able to help people take what they're doing and bring it to the next level through video marketing and through content. So that's why Black businesses matter to me.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love when we ask that question because I promise you, we ask everyone and everyone's different. That's part of the reason why I asked is because every answer is different, but at the same time, everyone endorses it like it matters and giving a reason behind it so that there's more clarity and inclusion in the workplace of collaborating and bringing Black businesses to the table when there is opportunities that are being had. It's just important that we are at the table because of what you just said. So thank you for that. As we close, we want to just quickly ask if you could share your website, your handle, so that people can connect with you outside of this podcast.
All right. So my name is Jevonne Bowman, and you can keep in touch with me on Instagram at Six Figure Content Queen. That's the number 6, and then Figure Content Queen. I'm also on Facebook. I have Content Queen Academy. I have a private group on there. So you can request to join that. And then my website, I have two, is sixfigurecontentqueen.com and contentqueenacademy.com. I have been working on a video course in addition to my one-on-one mentorship so that I can have a larger impact. And that will be available on my website. So you can leave your email address and you can be updated.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jevonne. Before we close, because we believe that it's important that this is shared, what brings you joy?
There's so many things that bring me joy, but I think my family, first and foremost, brings me joy, and just being able to be a mother and to be a daughter and all the roles that I play, sister, cousin, that brings me joy as a woman. I love traveling, I love cooking, and I have hobbies like gardening and making art, but I think family is first and foremost.
Thank you for sharing. It's interesting. Jevonne, I've been working in the space of multicultural for 2 decades now, and both working within the Hispanic sector as well as in the African American sector. And I remember when we were doing all these research studies and Hispanics talked about their family. And I just remember they felt like for Blacks, it was more so providing for our family and not finding the joy in our family. It was more so preparing, creating opportunities, money, whatever for our family. And I'm learning since doing this podcast how many people really talk about spending time with their family, enjoying their family is so important. And I'm learning on this podcast, people need to log on here to realize that family is important within the culture, the Black culture, and that it's important that it's highlighted, which is why we asked that question, because we found that in modern America, that Black joy wasn't showing up. And so thank you for just sharing that and just reminding us of family, even as we build content, that we don't lose sight of that and lose sight of that. So I just want to say thank you for being a guest on Black Businesses Matter. It was such a joy. And I just wanted to ask you, Jevonne, what part of upstate New York are you from?
I'm from Schenectady, New York. I was born and raised here. And it's really funny because once I was graduating high school, I turned my life around. I was like, I'm never coming back. I'm going to New York. I'm going to be working in the industry. And that's what I did. It wasn't until 2020, with the birth of my son in March, during the beginning of the pandemic, I was living in Brooklyn. I decided I wanted to be closer to my family. I had, like a dream that I lived back in upstate New York with my son. And I was just like, you know what? I think it's time to go home. And that was actually the catalyst for me to pivot my business from working in traditional media onto digital, because I wanted to be able to work remotely. I wanted to be able to provide for myself and my son and my family, but also practice my skill. The industry is not that big up here, so I definitely make use of the Albany International Airport. I like to travel up and down the East Coast, but Schenectady is my home.
Good for you. Yay, yay, yay. My family is in Rochester, so that's why I was asking about where you are. So that's awesome that you get to go home. And then small towns are popping right now, Jevonne. People are wanting simpler lives. So I think it's beautiful that you went back home to be with your family and continue to operate in your purpose. So I just want to say thank you so much for being an incredible guest on Black Businesses Matter.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be here, and I appreciate the conversation and the topic. I think it's important that we tell our own stories and that we are in control of the narrative, especially what you were saying about families. It's, yeah, we know as Black women, our families are important. Everyone pitches in to raise children, especially as a single mom having to navigate working. My mom is definitely a big part of my family and multi-generational households, but I feel like you don't see that narrative in the media. And so we really have to show the diversity of our experiences.
Yeah. That diversity, that part right there. I just want to thank you listeners for tuning in for another episode of Black Businesses Matter. I'm super excited about what we have coming up next and all these opportunities to help, I think, modern American brand marketers to understand the complexities, but also the diversity in thought, because we talk about diverse communities, but really about the diversity and thought in bringing different people to really share within their own right. So we just want to say thank you so much for sticking with us, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us this week on Black Businesses Matter podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen so you will never miss a show. You can also follow us on social media at the L3 Agency and at Larvetta Speaks. If you love the show, leave a rating so that we can continue to bring you impactful episodes. You can also take the pledge and order our merch at our website at thell3agency.com. THEL3agency.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.